Good morning, trainees. Welcome to your training. You are all CIA trainees. If you're not, please raise your hand and you will be escorted from the premises. Is the door secure? Locked? Remember, the first lesson of security is you don't write anything down. No note-taking. So we are here today to learn how to sabotage organizations the CIA way. So again, welcome recruits. I hope that you learn a lot from this training session and that you are able to go and be embedded into various organizations and teams on organizations. Let me say that I apologize for my appearance. I am deeply embedded in an agile team, and I can neither confirm nor deny that it is not in Ohio, and that it might just be in a much drier clime. So if you happen to see beads of sweat on my forehead, it's the humidity. It's not nervousness. But I can neither confirm nor deny where I am. Again, do not take notes. So we're going to start with a little bit of background. The predecessor to the CIA, the OSS, was created during World War II. And part of what they did during World War II was to put together various missions, various trainings for resistance, as well as other groups in occupied Europe. What you will be learning today dates back to 1944. Unfortunately, it was declassified in 2010. So you may find in your postings double agents who have been trained in how to defeat these methods that you will be learning. The director of the OSS was General William Donovan. He, among other things, was the founding father of the CIA, so we had some continuity there. And he also later was an ambassador to Thailand. There have been some famous people affiliated with the CIA and the OSS. You may have heard of Julia Child. She actually was a celebrity chef who got her start with her first recipe developing shark repellent for the OSS. Arthur Schlesinger, you may have heard of him, famous historian. No note-taking. I see you have paper and pencil out.
It's a pen.
Same difference. John Ford, a very famous director and propagandist. So today we'll be talking about the Simple Sabotage Manual. This was a document that was put together for organizations, resistance organizations within Europe, with the goal of teaching and training people how to, with very little in the way of equipment and very small chance of getting caught, to sabotage the efforts of the Nazis in occupied Europe. One of the guidelines that they give is to not disseminate the entire document. That is why today we are only covering the chapter on organizational sabotage. Be vigilant. You will find opportunities for sabotage everywhere in an organization. Hopefully, you will be able to recall certain memories of this training. Did everybody have their recall training to be able to memorize things that they have seen and recall? I hope so. So some of these opportunities that we will have are good business practices. All the more to hide in the open. They won't expect you. Even though they see you coming, they won't know. So, we want to be able to, do in our designs the ability to make lots of decisions. We can't decide how our design's going to work unless we have tested out the latest 3 frameworks to find which one's going to work better for us. And then, of course, there's the connection pool libraries, as well as what are we going to be using for our agile methodologies. And for our retros, are we going to use Jira? Are we going to use something else? There's a lot of decisions that need to be made. And this is one place where you can seriously impact and slow down a project. Remember, slow and steady wins the race. You don't want to be first to market. Because if you're first to market, then you have that entire education cycle where you have to convince your potential customers that they have a problem and that you can solve this problem for them. So therefore, you will actually be saving money by being slower. Document everything. Now, I understand that most developers do not like to document things, or that's what I've been told at any rate. The thing with this, though, is 90% of the cost of a project is in maintenance. If it's not documented, then maintenance cost is going to be higher because people will have to look at the code and so forth. So, the more complete and complex your documentation, the better. Avoid things that auto-document because, we all know that computers make mistakes, as has been seen with ChatGPT. So, a human should be writing these documents. And everything needs to be done through channels. We need to follow policies. We need to follow procedures to the letter. It's amazing how much time can be spent having to go through channels, having to have everything documented. So these are very, very excellent ways that you can sabotage productivity and not get any blame for it. They won't expect it, that your goal is to sabotage productivity. They won't expect that you're actually there to prevent stuff from being done because nobody can argue that having documentation, that making good choices about your frameworks and about your tooling and so forth are good business practices. So, again, having code cowboys that don't follow the rules is another way of causing issues in the long run. So by advocating that you are there to make sure that every policy and procedure is followed, you will be ensuring, to their minds, the success of your project. Meanwhile, you can spend months waiting on this because, you put in a request, so your colleague on a different team says, okay, we need to have a meeting about this. Let's schedule it for next week. Meet regularly. Talk a lot. Illustrate your points with long anecdotes. Say, for instance, you might argue that the benefits of a waterfall implementation. And, there are projects where you definitely want to do waterfall. Anyone hear of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge? or battleships. Recently, the Navy tried to make some ships that were modular and plug and play, that they could basically drop on a new module for a particular mission, and it failed. It failed badly. So that demonstrates the issues with agile methodologies. It is not a one-stop shop. It is not something that works in every case. So you might find and present to your organization, to your team, that this particular project that you are working on so diligently and want to succeed, that it is better served with a waterfall methodology. Because if you've taken all of those efforts to document everything, you don't want to have to redocument, do you? That will waste time. That will waste energy. Now, sometimes we find that our meetings have too many people in them, and we need to be able to expeditiously make decisions, and so we need to set up working groups and committees. Now, you need to make sure that there's proper representation on every single committee. So they should be at least 5 people involved in the committee. And then you need to find a time where the committee can work and meet together on regular time periods. Once a week is good, where everybody's schedule aligns. This is sometimes as difficult as a conjunction of the planets, where everything will align and work together. So it might be 3 or 4 weeks before you can find a time slot that will work for everyone. And this is fine. This will help you to slow down your projects, to be less productive. Remember, that is our goal here today. We want to eliminate productivity. Well, not eliminate, because if it's eliminated, then people will notice. So we want to slow it down. We want things to just take longer and have natural reasons for doing so. Nobody's going to question the fact that everybody's calendar's full because they have meetings. That's just the way things are. And your concerns, your issues need to be heard. And if someone misses a meeting, then you need to make sure that they are up to date and everyone else in the meeting is up to date on your concerns and your issues. Because how can you make good decisions if everybody's voice is not heard? So we need to hear everybody's voice. There needs to be representation. In the modern matrix organization where you have subject matter experts that are embedded within teams and projects, they all have different concerns. Their concerns affect each other. And we don't want to be siloed. Well, we do, but we can argue that, if we hear from everyone's concerns, then we are not being siloed, and we can better meet and serve the needs of our organization. And who's going to argue with that? Now, choosing the right words is very, very important. Because if you don't control the messaging, if you happen to use the wrong word, that's going to get stuck in the minds of management. That's going to get stuck in the minds of other people. And once it's there, you can't get it out. So this is why it's really, really, really important to have a glossary of terms with meanings that everyone agrees on. It doesn't have to be a dictionary definition, but it needs to be something that everyone can agree upon. I don't know if you've ever been in a room with QA, developers, UX, etc., all trying to come up with a common terminology. It's valuable work. It is needed. But trying to get them all to work together and agree that word X means the same thing to everyone, it's not quite Sisyphusian, but it is another excellent, excellent way to slow down a project. And you have good reason for doing so, because your project needs to be able to control messaging. Check the doors, they should be locked. And so the people standing and guarding the doors, you do have your firearms ready. Remember, this is top secret training. People make mistakes. We want to have a blameless culture. So, in order to make sure that we catch mistakes early, we need to look at the minutes from previous meetings and review them. Are they still valid? Are we all still on the same page and in agreement with each other? Otherwise, we're going to make a mistake and we will waste time trying to correct our mistakes. So, and of course, we don't want to waste time, do we? Except that you, in this room, do. Remember that. Your goal within the organizations that you will be embedded is to reduce productivity, to slow things down. And everything that you're arguing is for the benefit of the organization, for the benefit of the project you're working on, to build better projects. So you want everybody to be reasonable, to make, well-reasoned, well-thought-out decisions. Do not, under any circumstance, advocate for the idea of load, fire, aim, where you try something and then, if you need to, correct it. This will lead to solutions too quickly. Do not advocate pursuing low-hanging fruit, because it may not be the root problem. You need to find the root problem. You need to be able to solve it and be sure that you are solving what is the real problem. Do not look for opportunities to streamline and remove road bumps in the way of releasing value to your customer, because you might release the wrong value, something that they don't need or want yet. Remember, we don't want to have an accident. We don't want to release the wrong thing too quickly, because that will cause confusion. When we release something, we want to release the right thing. We don't want to have constant change for our users. Users hate change. Change hurts. So we want to prevent them from hurting. Now, in many, many organizations, there is the idea of who is allowed to make a decision. And, all of the steps that are required to obtaining management approval. You don't want to be called up in front of management for having made a decision that turns out to not have been the right decision. There should be one person accountable for a project, i.e., one neck to wring, and you don't want that neck to be your neck. It should be somebody else's neck. So, make sure that management, at whatever level is appropriate, I usually advocate making sure that it is at least a director or CTO level that is approving these decisions. And you need to, of course, be able to present your decisions and your reasoning in a 10-page PowerPoint presentation with an executive summary and be scheduled to work on your, for the CTO's schedule. Okay, yes, the CTO is busy, but it's more important not to make the wrong decision. Morale on a team is very, very, very important. So in order to have morale, having ping pong tables, having snacks, having catered lunches, having parties, having meetups after work on a regular basis, these are all ways of improving morale. Who can argue with the fact that we need to have good morale? Nobody, right? It doesn't matter that our project has missed the deadline by 3 months, 6 months, a year, 3 years, as long as our culture is active. Got to have all that yogurt and probiotics. But as long as our culture is active and working together, then we are a successful team. By the most important metric of all, do we fit and can we work together? So paperwork and paper trails are very important. We need sign-offs. We need to make sure that all changes are reviewed prior to being deployed in production. And we need to make sure that each and every single one of our changes, that operations, that the DBAs, that QA, that tech lines, support lines, etc., are all aware of any change we make, even if it's adding a period to a string, because the screen will have changed. It affects usability. It's going to confuse your users. So, help desk needs to be aware of this. You need to have a regular change review board that meets. And the more people means the more groups are represented. And because more groups are represented, you, of course, are not going to have any surprises. We don't want surprises. We want stable environments. So, make sure that everything gets documented, disseminated, and then signed off by all of these groups. The more people that do so, the better. Procedures and processes are good. We need them. Otherwise, we live in the Wild West. And nobody would want that to happen. We need to have the proper checks and balances for deployment. If you have CI/CD systems, do you trust a computer to make the decision to release? Do you want to make the decision to trust the computer? Probably not. So, you'll need QA to sign off that the tests ran completely and properly. You'll need the change board to approve your release to production, and so forth. This is one way where you can tie up releases. This is one way where you can definitely slow down productivity. Because if everybody and every organization, team, etc., SMEs that have an interest or a concern in releases to production are represented trying to match up everybody's schedule, will be difficult at best. So rather than having weekly change meetings, bi-weekly might be the soonest you can do it, or monthly, or quarterly, or semi-annually. We want to make sure that anything we release is going to be successful. Nobody can argue with that. We want to reduce risk. We want to not cause outages. Now, I don't know where you will be embedded, but it could very well be in an organization that has regulatory issues that need to be complied with. In light of the recent SEC ruling, as well as groups in Europe, now the EU has released regulations regarding ESG compliance and reporting. The SEC has now released regulations. California has. India is in the process of doing so. Our analysts believe that Singapore will shortly be doing it. Well, if you make claims, if your organization claims something in ESG reporting that turns out not to be true, your organization could be liable. And not only could there be financial issues, there could also be reputational issues. And depending on the type of organization that you will be embedded in, the reputational issues could be far more costly and have larger impacts than any financial. So we need to make sure that all of our regulations are complied with to the letter, because we don't want to have problems. Everybody likes to automate, right? Automation removes humans from the equation. Automation means that we can have reproducible, repeatable processes. Who can argue that that's good? Well, of course, we need tools to verify that the automation is working properly and test our automations and validate that any of the changes to the data that have occurred properly. This is just common sense. It is just something that will enable us to be more sure that our automations work. So, we can't really automate anything without having all these safeguards. Now, part of environments, part of culture, is a culture that listens to the employees, that is concerned and open and trusting. And open lines of communications flow down and up, both. So we need to have organizations to hear employee concerns. We need representation from every single group within the organization. Especially, we need representation from groups that otherwise would be underrepresented. This might mean that these committees, that these groups are large, because we want to be able to maintain and be able to communicate everyone's concerns. Who can argue with that? in a world where there is reviews and communications, not just from top down, but from bottom up, we need to be able to address that. And of course, any time that someone raises an issue, then you need to spin off a group to study this issue. And in the process of studying it, then you'll spin up a committee that will meet once a week or once a month to make sure that the messaging that is sent to management is correct, and then, of course, to follow up on management's response and your counter-response and so forth. And this is one way that you can ensure that your entire work week is primarily concerned with meetings. But you're busy, of course. You're doing valuable work. One of the things that has really, really been helpful for us to be able to slow down productivity is the agile concept and the DevOps concept of measuring everything. It takes time to measure things. Because you have to measure everything before you can put anything in production, well, you need to make sure that your metrics are there. You need to agree on the metrics. What are we measuring? What are our guidelines? And then you need to write the code to implement these metrics. And then you need the code to review the metrics. If you can't just have a human there, because humans are fallible, and humans aren't there 24/7 to monitor. So you'll need to set up alerts and alarms. Just having a board that will show you, hey, we've gone red, is not enough. We need to make sure that we don't have these issues. And if you don't measure it, you don't know that there's a problem. So we must measure everything. You don't want to know, well, actually, you do want to know how much time can be spent on a project instead of releasing value, making sure that we have all of our metrics. And nobody's going to argue with the fact that you need metrics. So, it's easy. We're going to go through these principles and summarize them in a few easy steps. So this next bit is the important part. If you remember nothing else, remember these few pieces of wisdom so that you can effectively sabotage productivity. In the first case, we want to choose processes and tools over people. These processes and tools are there for a reason. They have been agreed upon. They have been reviewed. And they are best business practices. So therefore, we must choose them over people. We must ensure that they are followed to the letter of the law. Everyone clear on this? Okay, repeat after me. Choose processes and tools over individuals and interactions. Okay, you in the back there, you weren't speaking. I'll let it go this time. Remember, though, you're a trainee. You are here conditionally. And if you don't comply and do well in your training, the rumors of mind wipes, which I can neither confirm nor deny, you might have a close personal understanding of. You wouldn't want to wake up in, say, Bangkok with no ID and $5 to your name, would you? And, no knowledge of how you got there other than that you've been on a big bender. We want to ensure that our documentation is correct. Because if the documentation's not correct and comprehensive, how do we know what we're doing? How do we know what we are releasing to our customers? We need to document these things. They need to know what they're getting. Working products, they'll get that eventually. Okay, ready? It's time again. All together. Choose comprehensive documentation over working products. Okay, not as inspired as the previous one, but okay. We also, in order to work together, we need to have clear definitions of boundaries. We need to have clear definitions and contracts of how our project will work with other teams. We need to clearly define this. And of course, that needs to be decided prior to any development work. Because we don't want to have to rewrite things later, do we? No, that would waste time. Okay, ready? Choose contract negotiation over customer collaboration. Did you all miss your daily dose of coffee? You sound tired. It's not even lunch yet. Remember, you have physical training this evening at 8. And going along with our having clear, negotiated contracts, we're going to have our plan. And we need to make sure that we follow the plan. And if something changes, well, after we have completed our project, then we can come back, especially if it's a government contract, and bill because now the contract has changed. Our deliverables have changed, so we can bill now for the new deliverables. This will bring more work to the company. And this will bring more money. Okay, yes, perhaps it might mean that instead of having something working in 6 to 8 months, it might take 3 or 4 years, at which point the Congress will have changed, at which point the president will have changed, priorities will have changed, and you still don't have a working project. That then, because it's not ready, gets canceled. So, we want to choose following a plan over responding to change. Now, our organization needs a clear message. This message needs to be communicated through OKRs and KPIs from the highest levels down. And we need to be able to agree upon these. So, in order to do so, management needs to make these decisions. And the priority needs to be on management, not individual. So ready? Choose management from above over individuals. It takes time and effort to test things. We need to be able to go with our gut. Good managers, good leaders are going to make decisions based on their feelings. You want a leader who will come in and take charge and give direction, right? Well, if it takes time to do metrics gathering, if it takes time to look through logs and to be able to see what the system is actually doing, then you'd be wasting time. You need a dynamic, active leader who comes in, forms a tiger team, makes sure that the room is filled with everybody that is involved in an issue and is able to make decisions. Okay, they might make the wrong decision, but that's to be expected upon occasion. So we want to choose opinions and assumptions over empirical observations. Remember, we want to be able to do things quickly, or that's how we want to appear to advocate for them. In reality, it's likely that this will slow things down, which is what we want. No, we don't want to be first to market. And we want to be in a place where we are not going to get blamed for something. Remember, in an organization with one neck to wring, we don't want that neck to be ours. It should be someone else's neck. So we need to CYA. Don't advocate RTFMing, and build a culture that is filled with snafus. Insist on TLAs whenever possible. Don't encourage experimentation. You're probably all too young to have teenage children. And it's unlikely that, since you are working for the CIA, that you yourself would have gone through a period of experimentation and exploration. Well, we don't want to encourage that, do we? You might have the wrong sorts of people. So we want to choose a culture of fear and blame over safety to experiment. Remember, these are all things that you can do. If people are afraid, they're not going to quickly make change. If people are afraid, they are not going to make decisions unless they are absolutely certain that they are making the right decision. Remember, we're from the government, and we're here to help. So I will close out this session now, reminding you that you are here as representatives of the government. Freedom, capitalism, America. Thank you.